My name is Leora Kerr. I was 28 years old the day my mother chose a backyard barbecue over my doctoral graduation. I remember standing in a narrow bathroom stall at Riverton Medical University, balancing my phone between my shoulder and cheek, so the tears sliding down my face wouldn't ruin the makeup I'd carefully done that morning. I had practiced that makeup look 3 times the night before. It was supposed to be the day everything paid off. Outside the door, I could hear the low thunder of the auditorium crowd. The announcer's voice echoed through the hallways, calling names one after another. Microphones crackled. People cheered. Families clapped so loudly the sound vibrated through the tiled walls. Inside that bathroom stall, all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat and my mother's voice message playing again in my ear. "We already ate, sweetheart." I stared at the text on my screen for nearly a full minute before the words actually made sense. "We already ate." Then another message appeared. A photo. It showed a long folding table in my parents' backyard in Willow Creek, covered in trays of ribs, smoked chicken, and dripping brisket. People stood around laughing with plastic cups in their hands, and right in the center of the picture was my older brother Travis Kerr standing behind the grill like some kind of local celebrity. The caption read, "So proud of Travis, best pit master in the county." There was no, "Good luck, Leora." No, "We're on our way." Just smoke meat. And a celebration I clearly wasn't part of. My hands started shaking as I pressed the call button. "Mom," I said when she picked up, trying to keep my voice steady. "You do realize my ceremony starts in 10 minutes, right?" Through the phone, I could hear country music playing, people laughing, the sharp hiss of meat hitting a hot grill. Someone shouted my brother's name like he'd just won a championship. "Oh, honey." My mother sighed the way people do when you complain about the weather. "Don't be so sensitive." I closed my eyes. "We're doing something really special for your brother today," she continued. "A food critic from the city came down to try his barbecue. It's a big opportunity for him." My throat tightened. "We can watch your ceremony on the live stream later." I swallowed hard. "It's my doctorate, Mom," I said quietly. 8 years. You promised you'd be here." For a moment the line went silent. Then my father's voice cut in from somewhere near the phone. Louder. Sharper. Already annoyed. "Leora, don't start being dramatic," he said. "Your brother works hard too. We can't be everywhere at once." And right then, standing there in that tiny bathroom stall, I felt something inside me finally break. I looked up at my reflection in the mirror. Cap gown. Honor cords draped over my shoulders. The life I had built completely on my own. And in that moment, it hit me like cold water. For 28 years, I hadn't been the main character in my family's story. I had been background noise, an extra, just Travis Kerr's little sister. That was the last phone call I ever made as Leora Kerr. Before continuing, please take a few seconds to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if this story truly resonates with you. Don't forget to let me know where you're listening from and what your local time is. What follows contains fictional elements and is AI-assisted to highlight the humanistic message and emotional experience. Hopefully, you'll find something for yourself. If not, take good care of yourself, and we'll see each other again later. If you've ever been the responsible one in a family that revolves around someone else, you probably understand something most people don't. The big betrayal rarely comes out of nowhere. It's usually the result of 1,000 smaller cuts that happened quietly over the years. By the time I was standing in that bathroom at Riverton Medical University, I had already lived 28 years as the second choice in the Kerr family. My parents built their entire identity around smoke and sauce. Our place, Kerr's Smokehouse, wasn't just a restaurant in Willow Creek. It was practically a family religion. My brother Travis Kerr could overcook a rack of ribs, and my mother, Linda Kerr, would still clap her hands and say, "Look at him. He's a natural." Meanwhile, I brought home science fair trophies, full-ride scholarships, and research papers with my name printed in academic journals. The most recognition I ever received was a distracted smile and a reminder. That's nice, Leora. Don't forget to help your brother at the register tonight. While Travis learned how to charm food bloggers and local reporters, I learned how to map infection curves and write grant proposals. While my parents bragged about Travis's legendary brisket to every customer who walked through the door, they couldn't even remember the name of my dissertation advisor. So no, that phone call earlier didn't come out of nowhere. It was just the first time I heard clearly what they had been telling me my whole life. You will never be the main event. I left that bathroom before I could talk myself into apologizing again for being upset. Outside, the event coordinator was waving graduates toward the line that curved behind the stage. Families clustered everywhere. Parents adjusted caps, siblings straightened collars, people laughed and took emotional selfies under the university banners. I walked alone. I held my diploma folder against my chest like it might float away if I loosened my grip. One of my classmates, Maya Sullivan, glanced behind me and frowned. Hey, are your parents running late? I gave her the tight automatic smile you learn when you don't want to explain your entire life. They're watching from home. Maya grimaced. That sucks, she said bluntly. You're the smartest person in this cohort. They should be in the front row. Her words hit harder than she probably realized. Have you ever had a stranger value you more in one sentence than your own family has in years? I found my seat and looked behind me. The entire row where my family should have been sitting was empty. Strangely, the silence of those empty chairs felt louder than the roar of the entire auditorium. When the dean began calling names, the room filled with applause after every graduate crossed the stage. I sat there thinking maybe this was just how my life worked. I would keep doing the work, and my family would keep grilling ribs. Then suddenly the dean's voice echoed through the speakers. Leora Kerr, Doctor of Public Health Epidemiology and Data Science. My heart jumped. I stood up, walked across the stage, and shook hands while cameras flashed. The applause was polite and warm, coming from professors and classmates. But the people whose approval I had been chasing since I was 5 years old were still standing around a grill somewhere in Willow Creek. When the dean handed me my diploma case and leaned closer for the photo, he quietly said something that stayed with me. Congratulations, Dr. Kerr. Your research is going to save a lot of lives. Something inside me shifted when he said that. Because if my work could save complete strangers, why was I still exhausting myself trying to be seen by people who didn't even show up? After the ceremony ended, the auditorium turned into a storm of flowers, hugs, laughter, and camera flashes. Families wrapped their graduates in embraces. Parents cried. Friends shouted congratulations. I slipped quietly into a side hallway and pulled out my phone. The Kerr family group chat was exploding with messages, but none of them had anything to do with my degree. They were all pictures from the barbecue. Travis standing beside the grill. Travis shaking hands with the food critic. Travis posing under a banner that read, Willow Creek's King of Smoke. Not a single message about my doctorate. Not one. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. For a moment, I almost typed something. Then I slowly lowered the phone. Instead, I opened a completely different app. One I had bookmarked months ago but never had the courage to use. It was a legal name change application form. I stared at the blank field that said, New Name. For a long moment, I didn't move. Then I began typing. But that is where the real story begins. The Kerr family group chat was overflowing with photos from the barbecue. My brother Travis Kerr stood proudly in front of a giant banner that read, Travis Kerr, King of Smoke. He had one arm around the food critic from the city, the other holding a carving knife, like he had just won some kind of championship. Relatives filled the comments. So proud of our star. Best barbecue in Willow Creek. Can't wait to bring my friends to Kerr's Smokehouse this weekend. There were dozens of messages. Not one of them mentioned my doctorate. My thumb hovered over the keyboard for a long moment. I thought about typing something sarcastic, something honest, something that might finally make them notice me. Instead, my hand slowly lowered. Then I opened a different app. One I had saved months earlier but never had the courage to actually use. It was a legal name change application. For a few seconds, I just stared at the blank fields. Then I began typing. New name, Leora Vale. It was a name I had been writing in the margins of my notebooks for years, sometimes absent-mindedly during lectures, sometimes late at night when I was imagining the life I might have someday. The life where I wasn't just Leora Kerr Travis's sister. Standing there in my doctoral gown with my diploma case tucked under my arm and the smell of barbecue practically seeping out of my phone screen, I realized something. Someday didn't have to wait anymore. By the time the sun went down on the day of my graduation, Leora Kerr was already beginning to fade like smoke. That night, I didn't go out for a fancy dinner. There was no celebration, no champagne, no family party. I sat alone at the small kitchen table in my apartment. My laptop was open. Papers were scattered everywhere between a half-melted frozen pizza and an overdue electricity bill. Not exactly glamorous, but there was something strangely peaceful about it. No sizzling meat, no clinking beer bottles, no relatives shouting that Travis was the pride of the Kerr family while I refilled their iced tea. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the steady tapping of my keyboard as I began rewriting my own existence. If you've never gone through a legal name change before, let me tell you something. It's a strange experience. Half bureaucracy, half rebirth. I filled out forms, printed affidavits, scheduled an appointment at the county courthouse. Under the line that asked for the reason for the change, I typed something polite. Personal and professional identity. What I really wanted to write was something else entirely, because I'm done being the background character in someone else's restaurant commercial. Later that night, I posted a single photo on my private Instagram. It was a simple picture from the ceremony. Me standing in my graduation gown holding my cap in one hand, while the stage behind me was already being dismantled. The caption was short. Doctor. Vale coming soon. A few friends immediately commented, "Wait. Are we changing names now? Dr. Vale sounds like a superhero." But one message caught my attention. It was from Clara Bennett, a friend from my graduate program, who had moved to Port Cascade a year earlier to work at a health technology company. Vale. Huh. I like it, she wrote. Are you still planning to take that interview with Sentinel Health Analytics? I blinked at the message for a moment. I had almost forgotten about that. A few weeks earlier, I had applied for a position at Sentinel Health Analytics, a company that specialized in using real-time data to detect disease outbreaks before they spread. They had liked my dissertation on foodborne illness modeling and offered to interview me after graduation. At the time, the idea felt overwhelming. Moving from Willow Creek to a city on the other side of the country felt huge. Leaving the streets where I grew up, leaving the restaurant where I had been bussing tables since I was 12 years old, leaving the life my parents expected me to return to. It had felt terrifying. But after that barbecue phone call, the decision suddenly felt like oxygen. I typed back to Clara, "Yeah, I'm in. Completely." The next morning, I woke up to two notifications on my phone. The first one was from the courthouse. My hearing for the legal name change had been scheduled. The second one was from Sentinel Health Analytics. We are pleased to formally offer you the position of Senior Epidemiological Data Scientist, pending your start date. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I laughed out loud. The sound echoed in my empty apartment. For once, the universe wasn't being subtle. Within a month, Leora Kerr would be nothing more than a legal footnote, and Dr. Leora Vale would have a one-way plane ticket to Port Cascade. I told my parents in the least dramatic way possible. Just a short email. I graduated today. I'm changing my name for professional reasons, and I've accepted a job with a public health data company in Port Cascade. I wish you the best with the restaurant. That was it. No accusations, no emotional speeches, just facts. For someone who used to write 15-paragraph emails trying to explain my feelings, it felt strangely final and honestly freeing. But what I didn't know then was that the decision to leave Willow Creek and start a new life under the name Leora Vale would soon bring me back to my family in a way no one could have imagined. I kept the email short. I'm changing my name for professional reasons and accepting a job with a public health data company in Port Cascade. I wish you all the best with the restaurant. That was it. Polite, distant, controlled. Very different from the version of me who used to send 15-paragraph messages trying to explain my feelings to people who never really listened. My mother, Linda Kerr, replied 2 days later. Port Cascade. That's pretty far. We assumed you'd come home and help Travis expand Kerr's smokehouse. She added another line. You know, your brother could really use your brain for the business side. Anyway, congratulations on the degree. We're busy preparing for the Summer Harvest Festival. Big opportunity for Travis. We'll talk later. My father, Greg Kerr, contributed a thumbs-up emoji in the family group chat. That was the entire response. My brother Travis didn't reply at all. If you've ever waited for an apology that never came, you probably know the strange, hollow feeling that follows. It's not anger exactly. It's more like realizing the door you kept knocking on was never going to open. So I stopped knocking. I packed my entire life into 3 suitcases and a carry-on bag. Clothes, books, research files, a few framed photos I almost left behind. On my last night in Willow Creek, I sat on the floor of my nearly empty apartment and wrote a letter. It started simply. Dear Mom and Dad, one day you're going to realize that your daughter became a doctor and you weren't there. One day you might need my help, and for the first time in my life, I'm not sure I'll answer the phone. I signed it. Love, Leora. Then I folded the letter and slipped it into the back of my journal. I never mailed it. It wasn't really meant for them. It was meant for me. A line in the sand. A quiet promise that I would stop chasing people who wouldn't even cross a parking lot for me. The morning my plane took off, I watched Willow Creek shrink beneath the clouds. The streets where I grew up blurred into tiny lines of light. For a moment, I wondered if I would ever come back. Then I leaned my head against the window and thought something that felt both terrifying and freeing. All right, Dr. Leora Vale. Let's find out who you are when nobody is calling you Travis Kerr's little sister anymore. Port Cascade turned out to be exactly the place I needed. The city didn't care who my brother was. No one there knew about Kerr's smokehouse, or Travis's barbecue trophies, or the Harvest Festival banners hanging in Willow Creek. Port Cascade cared about one thing: data. And that was exactly what I had spent 8 years learning how to understand. Sentinel Health Analytics occupied 2 floors of a glass building overlooking the harbor. The office was bright modern and full of whiteboards covered with equations and messy diagrams. On my first day, my manager, Dr. Marissa Cole, greeted me with a wide grin. She had electric blue streaks in her dark hair and a coffee mug permanently glued to her hand. She gestured toward the open office around us. We hunt ghosts in numbers here, she said. I must have looked confused because she laughed. Little signals. Tiny patterns hiding in mountains of data that tell us something bad is about to happen before anyone else sees it. She took a sip of coffee. You ready to chase ghosts, Dr. Vale? I didn't even hesitate. Yes. Within days, I was deep inside enormous streams of information. Hospital admission records, emergency room reports, restaurant inspection databases, social media complaints about food poisoning, public health alerts. Our job was to search through all of it and find patterns. Clusters of symptoms in certain neighborhoods, sudden spikes in emergency room visits, signals that might indicate the beginning of an outbreak. Sometimes it was nothing. Sometimes it was the early warning sign that something dangerous was spreading. I loved it. It felt like solving puzzles that actually mattered. For the first time in my life, my value wasn't measured by how many tables I could clear during a dinner rush or how quickly I could refill someone's iced tea. It was measured by whether my work could help prevent people from getting sick. Months passed. I learned to love the cold drizzle that rolled through Port Cascade in the mornings, the way the city smelled like rain and roasted coffee beans instead of smoke and barbecue sauce. I made friends with coworkers who knew me only as Leora Vale, the epidemiologist, who could stare at a spreadsheet for hours until the numbers finally gave up their secrets. And slowly, something unexpected happened. I stopped feeling like the invisible daughter of the Kerr family. I started feeling like someone entirely new. But the strange thing about data is that it doesn't care how far you run from your past. Eventually, the numbers have a way of leading you right back to it. When my coworkers asked about my family, I usually kept the answer simple. We're complicated. That word covered a lot of history without inviting too many follow-up questions. Life in Port Cascade settled into a rhythm. Long mornings with coffee and data sets, meetings with epidemiologists, late afternoons staring at graphs until patterns either appeared or refused to. Then one Tuesday afternoon, a notification flashed across my monitor. Our algorithm had flagged something. At first, it looked routine. Small alerts like that happened all the time. A slight increase in emergency room visits, a few overlapping symptoms. Nothing unusual during flu season. But this one caught my attention. There was a cluster of severe gastrointestinal cases appearing across 3 neighboring counties. I leaned closer to the screen. The timing between cases was tight. The symptoms were unusually intense, and buried in the hospital intake notes was something that made my stomach twist. Most of the patients had eaten at the same place, a restaurant chain. I pulled the name into a separate query and stared at the result. Kerr's Smokehouse. I murmured under my breath. For a moment, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. It felt like looking at a distorted mirror. Different state, different city, same story. You okay over there? I looked up to see Clara Bennett rolling her chair over from the neighboring desk. I turned my monitor slightly so she could see the map on my screen. Red dots were beginning to appear across the region. I think we've got a cluster tied to a restaurant chain, I said carefully. Clara leaned closer. What chain? Kerr's Smokehouse. She blinked and then laughed. Are you serious? They just opened a location here a few months ago. People are obsessed with that place. The brisket line wraps around the block every weekend. My pulse started to pick up. Why? She asked. I began clicking through the hospital records. Each file felt heavier than the last. Patients describing violent vomiting, severe abdominal pain, bloody diarrhea, high fevers. Lab reports started appearing in the system. E. coli. Salmonella. I exhaled slowly. If this pattern holds, I said quietly, they might be the source of an outbreak. Clara's expression shifted immediately from curiosity to concern. Within the hour, I followed standard protocol. I documented everything: timestamps, case clusters, geographic overlap, patient histories. Then I escalated the report to my manager, Dr. Marissa Cole, and began preparing a preliminary file for the State Health Department. On paper, it was routine, but nothing about it felt routine to me. That night, I lay awake in my apartment staring at the ceiling. My mind kept drifting back to my parents' kitchen in Willow Creek. I could see it clearly: the cutting boards, the stacks of buns, the giant stainless steel trays of meat, and my brother Travis moving quickly behind the counter. How many times had I watched him slap raw meat onto a cutting board, wipe his hands on a towel, and then reach into an open bag of bread? How many times had I pointed out cross-contamination risks? And how many times had someone laughed and waved me off? This is how we've always done it, Leora. Stop overthinking everything. Over the next few days, the red dots on my screen multiplied. More hospitals, more patients, more references to Kerr's Smokehouse. The State Health Department contacted our office requesting deeper analysis and all supporting datasets. By that point, we were no longer looking at a handful of upset stomachs. This was an outbreak. One night, I woke up suddenly drenched in sweat. My phone glowed in the darkness beside my bed. Without really thinking about it, I opened the Kerr family group chat. I hadn't looked at it in months. The latest message was a photo. My brother Travis stood in front of a huge banner. "Coming soon, Kerr's Smokehouse West Coast Tour." The caption read, "Proud of our boy taking the Grand National." Underneath it, my mother had commented proudly, "Nobody does barbecue like a Kerr." I stared at that picture for a long time. And then a realization hit me so hard it made my stomach twist. If the chain had expanded this quickly, the outbreak I was looking at might only be the beginning. There is a strange moment when you're holding information that could destroy your own family. Every version of yourself starts speaking at once. The good daughter says, "Call them and warn them. Give them a chance to fix it quietly." The scientist says, "Public health doesn't work like that. People are already sick." And somewhere deeper inside, a quieter voice asks a harder question. What happens if you stay silent? If you were in my place, what would you do? If you think I should choose the truth and protect the health of hundreds of people instead of protecting my family's reputation, leave a number 1 in the comments. I'm curious how many of you would make the same choice I was about to face. Some of them were kids. That thought kept echoing in my mind. Inside my head, it felt like 3 different versions of myself were arguing at the same time. The good daughter whispered that I should call my family and warn them quietly. Give them a chance to fix whatever was wrong before things became public. The scientist reminded me that public health didn't work that way. People were already sick. Some of them were fighting for their lives in hospitals. And then, there was the hurt child inside me. The one who still remembered standing alone at my graduation while my parents were celebrating a barbecue. That voice said something colder. "They skipped your doctorate for a grill full of ribs. Are you really about to risk your career to protect them? I wish I could tell you I made the right decision immediately. I didn't. For an entire week, I lived inside a fog of what-ifs. During the day, I kept working. I refined our models, built clearer visualizations for the health department, and joined conference calls with epidemiologists who used phrases like alarming cluster and significant liability. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my apartment. I kept thinking about how many birthday parties I had skipped growing up because my parents needed help at the restaurant. How many weekends I had spent wiping tables or working the grill while other kids were out living their lives. The decision finally snapped into focus the day we received a call from a pediatric ICU physician. His voice was tense and exhausted. He asked if he could access our data immediately. He had 3 children in critical condition. All of them had the same strain of E. coli, and they all had one thing in common. They had eaten at Kerr's Smokehouse within the past week. When the call ended, I didn't hesitate anymore. I stood up from my desk, walked straight to Dr. Marissa Cole's office, and quietly closed the door behind me. My hands felt slightly damp. "I need to disclose something," I said. Her eyebrows lifted. "What kind of disclosure?" "I have a personal connection to the restaurant chain we're investigating." She leaned forward slightly. "In what way?" I took a breath. "My parents own the original Kerr's Smokehouse in Willow Creek," I said, "and my brother Travis runs the company now." The words sat in the room like a live wire. Dr. Cole didn't react with shock the way I expected. Instead, she nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me." She folded her hands on the desk. "That means 2 things. First, you're officially recused from any policy recommendations moving forward. We can't have a conflict of interest." I nodded. "That's fair." She tilted her head slightly. "Second," she said, "I'm asking this as a human being, not your boss. Do they know what's happening?" I shook my head. "We're not exactly close." She thought for a moment. "Do you want to tell them?" Images flooded my mind. The children in the ICU. My brother standing in front of banners calling himself the King of Smoke. My parents bragging to customers that no one had ever gotten sick from their food, while I tried to explain safe cooking temperatures years earlier. I spoke slowly. If I call them, it won't be to protect them. Dr. Cole watched me carefully. It will be to give them a chance to do the right thing before the state forces them. She nodded once. Then call them as a daughter, she said. We'll keep doing our jobs here. That night, I sat alone in my apartment staring at my phone. It had been almost a year since I last dialed my parents' number. Finally, I pressed the call button. The phone rang twice. Then my mother, Linda Kerr, answered. Her voice sounded bright and casual. Well, is this Leora Vale now, or are we still allowed to call you Leora Kerr? Leora is fine, I said quietly. There was a short pause. I don't have a lot of time, I continued. I need to talk to you about the restaurant. If this is about you refusing to come home and help with the business, she began. Your father already said, it's not, I cut in. The room felt very still. Mom, I said carefully, have you had any reports of people getting seriously sick after eating at Kerr's smokehouse? She hesitated. Just for a moment. Well, there were a couple of complaints online, my mother finally said. But Travis says it's just people trying to drag his ratings down. You know how the internet is. My chest tightened. Mom, I said slowly, forcing my voice to stay calm. The reason I'm asking is because I work for a company that tracks disease outbreaks. And we've identified a cluster of severe food poisoning cases that point directly to Kerr's smokehouse. Silence filled the line. Then I added quietly, people are in the hospital. I paused. Mom, some of them are kids. For a few seconds there was nothing but the faint sound of voices in the background. Then I heard a scoff. My father's voice. Is that Leora? There was some movement then. My mother said, hold on. A second later the phone clicked onto speaker. My father, Greg Kerr's voice filled my small apartment kitchen in Port Cascade. You're accusing your own family's business of poisoning people now, he said sharply. After everything we've built from nothing, I'm not accusing anyone, I replied carefully. I'm telling you what the data shows. My hand tightened around the phone. You need to shut down temporarily. Just for inspection. Cooperate with the health department. Deep clean the kitchens. Retrain the staff. Check your suppliers. I swallowed. If you act quickly, you might be able to avoid something much worse. We are not shutting down. His response came instantly like a door slamming. Do you have any idea what that would do to our reputation? My father snapped. Do you know how many bookings Travis has lined up? We've got the River County Food Festival next month. He's the headline pitmaster. I closed my eyes. There it was again. His moment. Not the children in the ICU. Not the dozens of customers lying in hospital beds. His moment. If you don't close voluntarily, I said quietly, the state will force you to. The room felt colder. They already have our reports. This isn't just me calling as your daughter. It's a warning from someone who understands exactly how bad this could get. Before my father could respond, another voice burst into the call. My brother Travis Kerr. Loud, disbelieving, furious. Are you serious right now, he said. Is this about you being mad? We missed your little ceremony? I felt something snap inside my chest. It wasn't a little ceremony, I said sharply. It was a doctorate. And I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm trying to stop people from getting hurt. Travis laughed. It wasn't a friendly laugh. You always thought your books and numbers mattered more than real life, he said. You've been jealous of this business for years. Real life, I repeated quietly. My voice was shaking now. Real life is a mother sitting next to her child's hospital bed because someone didn't bother to check a meat thermometer. Enough. My father's voice cut across the call like a whip. We are not having this conversation. His tone was cold now. You do whatever you need to do for your job, he said, and we'll do whatever we need to do for our business. There was a short pause. But don't expect us to thank you if you drag our name through the mud. The line went dead. I stood there in my kitchen with the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Have you ever watched someone choose their ego over the easiest chance to fix everything? That night, something inside me finally went quiet. I stopped hoping my family would become the people I needed them to be. The next morning, I contacted a public interest law firm that specialized in whistleblower cases. If the Kerr family wanted a war between data and denial, they were about to learn something important. Never underestimate the quiet kid who spent years refilling sauce bottles in your restaurant while you took all the credit. The state moved faster than my parents ever believed it would. Within 2 weeks, health inspectors had quietly visited several Kerr's smokehouse locations. They collected food samples, interviewed kitchen staff, and compared lab reports from hospitals across multiple counties. The outbreak that had once been nothing more than a pattern of red dots on my computer screen was now officially declared. Local news stations began airing warnings. If you had eaten at Kerr's Smokehouse recently, they said monitor yourself for symptoms. I watched the reports from my desk in Port Cascade. My brother responded exactly the way he always did, with confidence, with swagger, with a camera pointed directly at him. He posted a video standing outside the flagship Kerr's Smokehouse restaurant back in Willow Creek. He wore his chef apron and stood in front of a blazing grill like he was filming a cooking show. We take food safety extremely seriously at Kerr's Smokehouse, Travis said with his practiced TV smile. We feed our own families here. He leaned closer to the camera. So don't believe everything you see on the news. Haters are always going to hate. But we're not going anywhere. The video exploded online. Thousands of likes, heart emojis, comments saying things like, "Tell them chef and best barbecue in the state." I watched the clip in silence. It left a bitter taste in my mouth. My manager, Dr. Marissa Cole, paused beside my desk. "The health department wants us monitoring social media chatter," she said. "There's talk the company is trying to spin this as a smear campaign." "Of course they are," I muttered. A week after Travis posted that video, I received an email from my mother. The subject line said only one word: Thanksgiving. Inside the email, she wrote that things had been tense, but family was still family. She suggested that I come home for Thanksgiving. Not for dinner, for a community barbecue. Travis would be hosting a massive cookout outside Kerr's Smokehouse. Local reporters, bloggers, and even a few city officials would be there. It would be, she wrote, a wonderful opportunity for the family to show unity. She added that it would be good public relations. I must have read that email 20 times. Not once did she say she missed me. Not once did she mention the hospitalized customers. They wanted me there as a prop. The daughter with the doctorate. The scientist. Proof that their family supported science. Part of me wanted to delete the message and never respond. But another part of me, the part that had already changed her name and rebuilt her life across the country, recognized something else. An opportunity. If your entire empire was built on public image, then the place where the truth would hurt the most was the stage you built for yourself. So I replied with 2 words: I'll come. Thanksgiving morning arrived under a cold, gray sky. Smoke hung low over Willow Creek when I drove into town. I hadn't been back since the day of my graduation. Walking toward Kerr's Smokehouse felt like stepping into a time capsule. The same red checkered tablecloths, the same neon pig sign glowing above the entrance, the same thick smell of hickory smoke and barbecue spice. But there were new details too. Large banners declaring their commitment to food safety. Hand sanitizer stations placed near the tables. Staff members wearing branded gloves. It looked impressive at first glance. But it was theater. None of it mentioned the dozens of people who had already been hospitalized. My brother spotted me as soon as I stepped into the parking lot. He was standing on a small stage they had built near the smoker pits. He wore a custom chef's coat with his name stitched across the chest in elegant cursive. "Leora, you made it," he shouted into the microphone. He pulled me into a quick side hug and turned back to the crowd. "Everyone, this is my sister, the doctor," he said proudly. "She's here today to prove that real science is on our side." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. I stepped back, resisting the urge to roll my eyes. Behind him, my mother Linda Kerr leaned close and whispered, "Just smile, honey. Let people take pictures. This is important for us." I looked at her. "Is it important for the families sitting in ICU waiting rooms right now?" I asked quietly. Her expression tightened instantly. "You really are determined to ruin this, aren't you?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm determined to tell the truth." The event unfolded like some strange carnival. Free barbecue samples, live country music, local officials shaking hands with reporters, camera crews circling the stage. My brother moved through the crowd confidently repeating the same phrases in every interview. Unfounded allegations. We passed every inspection. Our food is perfectly safe. I stood near the back with my arms folded waiting. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from an unknown number. "We're here. 10 minutes." It was from the state health investigator I had been working with through the law firm. Over the past 2 weeks, we had provided them with everything: data reports, timeline analyses, internal communications showing that Kerr's smokehouse had already been warned about potential safety risks, but continued operating at full capacity. When the health department decided to deliver the official shutdown order, they asked me one question. Did I want to be present? I told them yes. Not for revenge, not for spectacle, but because I wanted my family to see my face when the consequences of their choices finally arrived. Exactly 10 minutes later, the music stopped mid-song. A small group of officials in suits and state health department jackets walked toward the stage. Cameras immediately turned. The crowd began murmuring. My brother's confident smile flickered for the first time that day. "Well, looks like we've got some special guests," he joked weakly into the microphone. The lead investigator stepped onto the stage. She held a thick folder of documents in her hand. "Good afternoon." The lead investigator began, her voice steady as microphones from several news cameras pointed toward the stage. "I'm speaking on behalf of the state health department following a comprehensive investigation into the recent multi-county outbreak of E. coli and salmonella." The parking lot fell completely silent. She opened the folder in her hands and continued. "Our findings show that Kerr's smokehouse has been identified as a primary source of this outbreak." A murmur swept through the crowd. Effective immediately, she said, all Kerr's smokehouse locations are ordered to cease operations pending further notice. My brother's smile disappeared. "Failure to comply will result in additional fines and possible criminal charges." For a moment, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the entire parking lot. Someone gasped. A man near the back shouted, "My kid got sick here." Another voice yelled, "I knew something was wrong." My mother Linda Kerr turned pale. "There must be some mistake," she said, stepping forward toward the investigator. "We're a family business. We would never harm anyone." The investigator's expression remained calm but firm. "Ma'am, we have laboratory results, employee testimony and documentation showing that safety warnings were ignored." She paused and then glanced briefly past my mother. Her eyes landed on me. "We also received independent analytic reports that helped us identify the outbreak quickly," she added. "Thanks to that data, additional hospitalizations may have been prevented." My brother Travis Kerr turned toward me like a storm breaking. His voice dropped low enough that only the people nearest the stage could hear. "You did this," he hissed. "You brought them here." I met his stare. For the first time in my life, my voice didn't shake when I spoke to my family. "No," I said calmly. "Your food safety practices brought them here. I just refused to look away." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We're your family," she cried. "How could you choose strangers over us?" I slowly looked out at the crowd. Parents holding their children close, reporters scribbling notes, employees whispering nervously to each other. Those strangers I realized had trusted this place, trusted the name Kerr. They trusted you not to poison them, I said quietly. And you treated that trust like it was disposable. My voice grew steadier with each word. You skipped my doctorate graduation for a barbecue, I continued. And now that same barbecue is the reason someone else's child might never graduate from anything. For once, my family had nothing to say. No accusations, no dismissive jokes, no claims that I was exaggerating. Just 3 members of the Kerr family standing on a stage surrounded by the truth. The fallout happened exactly the way my parents had always feared, and exactly the way they had chosen by ignoring every warning. Within weeks, Kerr's smokehouse was everywhere in the news, but not for Travis's famous brisket. Headlines filled television screens and newspapers. Beloved local barbecue chain linked to dangerous outbreak. Families demanding accountability. Years of ignored safety complaints revealed. Former employees began speaking publicly. Kitchen workers described being ordered to serve meat that hadn't reached safe temperatures. Managers admitted they were pressured to keep the line moving even when food looked spoiled. Cleaning procedures had been skipped to save time and money. Civil lawsuits began piling up faster than the restaurant could respond. The fines issued by the health department were so large, they might as well have been demolition charges. My brother lost everything that had made him famous. His sponsorship deals vanished. The television cooking segment he had proudly filmed every month was canceled. Food festivals that once competed to invite him quietly removed his name from their guest lists. Awards that had once been displayed proudly in glass cases inside Kerr's smokehouse disappeared after organizers revoked them under ethical review. The empire my parents spent decades building collapsed faster than anyone in Willow Creek thought possible. And for the first time in my life, the Kerr family name was no longer associated with pride. It was associated with a public health scandal. In the months that followed, the consequences spread far beyond the restaurant doors. My parents, Linda Kerr and Greg Kerr, were forced to sell 2 of the 3 houses they had bought during the boom years just to keep up with legal fees. People sometimes assume that watching everything fall apart must have felt satisfying for me, like some kind of cinematic revenge. The truth is much more complicated. I didn't feel the triumphant rush people expect from stories like this. What I felt was heavier, quieter. A strange sense of relief that the world was finally operating according to a logic I understood. Actions had consequences. Ignored warnings had costs. The data I worked with had never just been numbers on a screen. They were people, families, lives. And now everyone could see that. Behind the scenes, the whistleblower case moved through the legal system without much drama. Because I had documented everything properly and disclosed my connection to Kerr's smokehouse early, the law protected me completely. More than that, it made me eligible for a portion of the financial penalties collected after the investigation. One afternoon, an email arrived from the law firm handling the case. Inside was a number so large I had to blink 3 times before I believed it was real. It was more money than I had ever imagined having under my own name. Not Travis's, not my parents'. Mine. For a few days, I considered doing something dramatic with it. Buying a luxury car, moving into some extravagant waterfront apartment in Port Cascade, but instead I did something that would have made the younger version of me cry in disbelief. I started a nonprofit organization. I called it the Line Cook Project. The mission was simple: free food safety education for restaurant workers, legal support for employees who witness dangerous kitchen practices, anonymous whistleblower assistance for people who were afraid of losing their jobs if they spoke up. We partnered with Sentinel Health Analytics to build training materials based on real data from foodborne illness outbreaks. We held workshops in multiple states. We helped kitchen workers file anonymous reports when managers told them to serve undercooked chicken or skip sanitation procedures. We created noise where silence had once allowed people to get sick. The irony of it all was impossible to ignore. The same restaurant empire that had once treated me like unpaid labor was now indirectly funding a movement that protected workers from bosses exactly like my family. My parents tried to contact me a few times during those months. At first, I let the calls go straight to voicemail. My mother's messages changed over time. The first ones were angry. How could you do this to us? Then they turned desperate. We're still your parents. Eventually, they softened into something quieter. We just want to talk. My father left only one message. His voice was cold. You destroyed your brother, he said. Are you happy now, doctor? You always thought you were too good for this family. I never called back. There was nothing I could say that reality hadn't already made clear. Several months later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Not an email, an actual handwritten letter. My mother's looping handwriting covered the envelope. Dr. Leora Vale. Inside, she wrote that the original Kerr's smokehouse in Willow Creek had been closed indefinitely. They had lost almost everything. Travis had stopped talking to most of the family. She said he was drinking too much and telling anyone who would listen that the world had turned against him. Near the bottom of the letter, there was one line that stood out. Maybe we should have listened to you earlier. Another line followed. Maybe we should have gone to your graduation. I sat with that letter in my hands for a long time. Not because it healed anything. It didn't. There was no real apology. No acknowledgement of the years I spent feeling invisible in my own family. But it confirmed something I had already realized that day in the bathroom stall at my graduation. Choosing myself had been the right decision. Eventually, I wrote a short reply. I told them I was sorry for the pain everyone was experiencing. I told them I had never wanted people to get hurt, but they were already getting hurt, and I chose to stand with them instead of protecting a lie. I ended the letter with one final sentence. I am open to conversations that are honest and take responsibility. I am not open to pretending none of this happened. I signed it simply. Leora. I never received a reply, and for the first time in my life, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. There's something I wish someone had told me when I was 18 years old and scrubbing barbecue sauce off restaurant tables while dreaming about a different life. Blood is not a free pass to hurt you without consequences. Family is not a magic word that erases harm. Love that demands you shrink yourself so someone else can feel bigger is not love. It's control. Your worth is not measured by how loudly your parents cheer at your milestones. It's not measured by whether your siblings' achievements get more attention than yours. Your worth lives in something quieter, in the persistence of your effort, in the integrity of your choices, in the courage it takes to walk away when staying means betraying yourself or others. I didn't destroy my family's empire out of spite. All I did was turn on the lights in a kitchen they insisted was spotless while people were getting sick at their tables. And by doing that, I finally stepped out of the smoke and into my own life. So if you're listening to this and thinking about the moments when you felt invisible at dinners, where everyone praised someone else while ignoring you at graduations, where no one showed up for you at workplaces, where your ideas were used, but your name was left out. Hear this. You are allowed to stop chasing people who refuse to see you. You are allowed to choose your own name, your own city, your own mission. You are allowed to say that sharing DNA does not mean you must stay silent. And if anyone ever tells you that demanding respect is an overreaction, remember something important. The people who benefit from your silence will always call your truth dramatic. Speak it anyway. Sometimes someone's life depends on it, including your own. Standing where I stand today, the hardest truth I learned is that doing the right thing rarely feels heroic in the moment. Most of the time, it feels lonely, uncomfortable, and painfully uncertain. I didn't expose the truth because I wanted revenge. I did it because real people were getting hurt, and at some point I had to decide what mattered more, protecting a name or protecting lives. Maybe you've been in a situation where speaking up meant risking relationships' reputation or peace at home. If you had been in my place, would you have made the same choice? I'm genuinely curious. And before you answer, I want to ask you something else. Did you listen all the way to the end of this story? If you did, thank you. Truly. Your time means more than you might realize. And if this story made you pause, think, or see something differently, you can help it reach someone who might need that same moment of clarity. A single subscribe from you helps stories like this travel farther. A comment, or sharing this video might quietly help someone else find the courage to stand up for what's right, in a way that makes you part of the reason these stories matter.